Min-max planning is more than a replenishment tool. It's a safeguard against stockouts and inefficiencies. Imagine never worrying about running out of critical stocks or overstocking shelves with unused items. Too much stock increases the carrying cost while too little disrupts the operations. Min-max planning provides a systematic approach to maintaining this balance through automated replenishment. By defining a minimum and maximum thresholds, the system ensures the stock level remains healthy without constant manual intervention. In this session, you will see step by step how to configure and execute min-max planning at sub-inventory level or item organization level with a focus on buy items.
Min-max planning works on a simple rule. Every item has a minimum and a maximum quantity. When total availability of the stock falls below the minimum, the system triggers a replenishment request to restore the stock levels without exceeding the maximum order quantity. For instance, if the minimum is set at 500 quantity and the availability dips below lower, an order is automatically generated. Key attributes such as minimum and maximum quantities along with the order constraints ensure the replenishment is controlled and efficient. These can be defined at the organization level or at the sub-inventory level. The system calculates the availability using on-hand stock, incoming supply and demand to determine when the replenishment is required. Replenishment can take two forms: make items where the item creates a manufacturing order for production, or buy items where it generates the purchase requisitions, internal transfers or sub-inventory movement requests. This flexibility ensures the min-max planning supports both manufacturing and procurement-driven supply chains. Automation is achieved by running the min-max planning report, which can also generate supply suggestions when the restock is enabled, making it a reliable tool to keep your operations balanced and efficient. When an item is defined as a buy item, min-max planning determines how the replenishment should happen based on the source type. There are three main options. The first is the source type as supplier. Here, the system expects the replenishment from an external vendor. When total availability drops below the minimum, the min-max planning report is run with Restock Yes. The system automatically creates a purchase requisition, and this requisition can then be converted into purchase order either manually or through automation. Once the supplier fulfills the order, the stock is received into the inventory organization, and this flow involves product information management for item setup, the inventory for monitoring levels, and purchasing for requisition and purchase order processing. Second, the source type as organization. This method replenishes stock by transferring it from another inventory organization within the same enterprise. The min-max planning report generates an internal requisition followed by a transfer order. Stock is then picked and shipped from the source organization and received at the destination organization. This is an internal transfer process handled entirely within the inventory module. Finally, the source type as sub-inventory. This option is used for sub-inventory level planning. When availability in a specific sub-inventory falls below its minimum, the min-max planning report generates a replenishment movement request, and the stock is transferred from an defined source sub-inventory to another sub-inventory with available stock into the destination sub-inventory. The inventory users then perform the picking and confirm the transfer, ensuring the stock levels are restored at the sub-inventory level. In short, the buy item replenishment can come from either supplier or another organization or another sub-inventory. This gives the flexibility to match both external procurement and internal transfer needs. Let's look at the end-to-end sub-inventory level planning for a buy item. When working with the min-max planning in Oracle Fusion, the idea is simple. You want to make sure the item never falls below a safety threshold and never exceeds its maximum capacity. For a buy item, the system needs to know how to replenish it, either through a supplier, an organization, or from within the same organization using a sub-inventory transfer. In this case, let's walk through how the min-max planning works for a buy item with the sub-inventory source type. The journey begins with the item creation. First, we define the item in the product information management and assign it to the inventory organization. Since this is a buy item, we apply the purchased item template, but instead of enabling the planning rules at the organization level, we configure them at the sub-inventory level. In manage item sub-inventories, we open the target sub-inventory, for example, FG stores, which is a finished goods stores, and enable the min-max planning. Here we carefully set the minimum quantity, minimum order quantity and maximum order quantity. Most importantly, we select the source type as sub-inventory, pointing either to a specific sub-inventory or leaving it open for the system to decide. With this, the item is ready to be managed by min-max planning rules within that sub-inventory. Once setup is complete, it's time to monitor and replenish. This is where print min-max planning report program comes in. We run it from the scheduled processes, selecting the organization, sub-inventory level planning and the item. By choosing Restock Yes, we allow the system to go beyond the analysis and actually create a replenishment movement request if the stock falls below the minimum. Behind the scenes, the program checks the availability by combining the on-hand, supply and demand. If the availability is less than the minimum, it calculates how much to order and essentially the difference between the maximum and the current availability, while still honoring the minimum and maximum ordering constraints. Now for the replenishment to succeed, the source sub-inventory needs to hold enough stock. If it doesn't, we load it with a miscellaneous receipt, ensuring that the system has inventory to pull from. Once that's in place, the replenishment request moves to execution and the system generates a movement request, which is then picked, confirmed and processed through managed movement requests. At this stage, the stock is physically transferred from the source sub-inventory, let's say stores, into the destination sub-inventory, restoring the levels in line with the min-max rules. In practice, organizations don't run this manually each time. Instead, they schedule the min-max planning program to run daily or even hourly. So, replenishment happens proactively and the outcome is smooth, automated process where sub-inventories never dip below a critical level and items are always available when needed and the stock flows seamlessly across warehouses. Let's look at the end-to-end process for a min-max planning of a buy item with the organization source type. When the buy item is set up with organization as its source type, the system replenishes the stock by drawing it from another inventory organization within the same enterprise. This makes it an internal transfer mechanism designed to move the goods across the organization instead of relying on the external suppliers. The process begins with item creation in product information management. The planner assigns the item to the required inventory organization and defines its min-max attributes, which is the minimum quantity, maximum quantity and order constraints. In the planning setup, the source type is specified as organization, pointing the system to search for replenishment from a designated supplying organization whenever the stock falls below the minimum. Once the setup is complete, the print min-max planning report program drives the execution, scheduled regularly by an inventory business user. This process calculates the total availability in the requesting organization. If the availability drops below the defined minimum and restock is equal to S, this is selected, the system automatically generates an internal requisition. This requisition then becomes the basis for the transfer order, the document that manages the flow of stock between the supplying and the requesting organizations. The transfer stock activates the operational task in the source organization. The inventory personnel picks and ships the requested stock. On the other hand, the destination organization records the receipts, restoring the inventory to within its minimum and maximum thresholds. The cycle is complete with the stock replenished seamlessly through internal enterprise logistics. From start to finish, this process is handled within the inventory module. The business user initiates and monitors the planning runs, while operational team in both organizations performs the physical movements. By scheduling this process on a regular basis, the enterprises can ensure smooth internal redistribution of the goods, avoiding shortages and optimizing stock utilization across organizations. At the end-to-end process for the min-max planning with supplier source type. When the source type for a buy item is set to supplier, the replenishment process is a joint effort between three key teams. One is the product team, inventory team, and the purchasing department. It begins with the product team who performs the one-time item setup. They create the buy item, apply the purchased item template, and enable the min-max planning at the organization level. They define the attributes such as minimum and maximum quantity, order constraints, and most importantly sets the source type as supplier. They also enter a default purchase price under the purchasing tab, which will be used when the system creates the requisition. Next is the inventory team, which takes over, and their role is to maintain the stock levels and trigger the replenishment when the availability falls below the minimum level. A business user from inventory team runs the print min-max planning report with the Restock Yes, and this program calculates the order quantity using the formula maximum order quantity minus the total availability. If replenishment is required, the system automatically generates the purchase requisition. To pass this requisition to purchasing, the team runs the process supply chain orchestration interface program, which transfers the data from the inventory module to the purchasing module's interface tables. Finally, the purchasing department fulfills the request. A purchasing business user runs the import requisition program, which pulls the requisition data from the interface tables and creates an approved requisition in the purchasing module. Buyers then use the process requisition task to convert the requisition into purchase order. At this stage, they can confirm and negotiate the prices with the suppliers. Once the PO is finalized, it is communicated to the vendor, and upon receipt, the stock is replenished back into the inventory organization. In summary, with supplier as the source type, the product team sets the rule and the inventory team monitors the stock and triggers the replenishment, and the purchasing department engages with the supplier to complete the cycle. Min-max planning automates the early stages of this process, ensuring that the stock is replenished quickly and accurately, while interdepartmental collaboration ensures smooth fulfillment.